Hi YouTube, this is Evie. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we're going to be talking about red flags in BDSM. This is something I have not made an actual video about before, obviously, but it has kind of come up in a few different places. It's come up on the podcast before, it's come up in like live streams, it's come up actually most recently on a Tumblr question that I got asked. If you guys don't have a Tumblr, you guys should definitely follow me because that's the best place to see answers to questions and also ask me questions, just FYI. Somebody asked, what are red flags to look for a dominant potentially taking advantage of a submissive? And while that is definitely a big portion of all of the red flags you're going to have to be aware of in BDSM, it does happen on both sides of the slash. So there are times where a dominant could be coerced by a submissive, just as much as there are times where a submissive is going to be coerced by a dominant. I'm also not necessarily going to be tailoring this to any particular level of experience. I think red flags are something you should always be aware of in kink, regardless if you have, a week of experience or 10 years of experience. If you're playing with a new person, if you are going to a new dungeon, if you are a part of a new city or a new scene, or if it's your first time at a brand new munch, whatever it is, as long as it's new in some fashion, you should be aware and looking out for warning signs. And even if you're in an existing relationship or you are entering a relationship with somebody you have known previously, you still need to be aware of these things, because even if you've known someone for a really long time, they can be toxic and just be really good at hiding it. That's all I'm gonna say. It also does not matter if you are participating online or in real life. I think looking for the warning signs are actually a bit easier online because you generally have it very clearly spelled out in text, whereas in real life there's a bit more like nuance to it, and people don't tend to be as like obvious or direct with things as they may be online, just because that's how things work. But without further ado, I am going to get into the list. Number one is they insist on not using safe words. This is generally a big red flag. You should always use safe words in BDSM. There are very few times where I would think personally that it is okay to not use safe words. Generally, those are going to be long-term, established BDSM relationships that have already been going on and have already done play that involves safe words. Especially if you're new, you're gonna want to make sure that you use safe words, because those are going to be your security. Those are going to be how you know the scene will stop. This is what helped prevent BDSM from becoming abuse, is the use of safe words. A lot of times you will see people who say, oh, my dream submissive is somebody who never uses safe words, or a submissive who says, I never have to use safe words. I don't believe in them. You can do to me whatever you want. No. That is bad. Do not do that. Do not play with those people. Safe words do not make you a bad kinkster. Safe words do not make your play less exhilarating or exciting. It is what gives you control over the scene, both as a dominant and as a submissive, or top and the bottom, or whatever you are. Like, it is just helpful. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't be playing, without safe words. Just don't go there. You can explore that realm eventually, with consensual non-consent, without safe words or whatever at a later date, but especially if you're new, don't try it right now. Number two, they assume titles. This both means somebody who walks up to you and calls you master or mistress or my lord or whatever without even like introducing themselves, but also dominants who insist that you call them master or lord or whatever the first time you meet them. There's some leeway for this. Like in the leather community, a lot of people will introduce themselves as Master Sam or Master James or whatever, and the connotation is a bit different there. Like, it means that they have earned that title within their community, and it's not necessarily assuming a relationship with you. It's just about, like, I am a master. This is what I do. This is the side of the slash that I fall on. But, like, generally, in, like, the general kink community, somebody who goes up to you and says, I am Mistress so-and-so, and you are my slave, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just don't, like, that's not good, because those are the people who can't differentiate between their fantasy and reality and only see you as an object on which they can project and get their fetishes, worked out. And that is not your job. You do not have to address anybody as master so and so or mistress so and so. And also, if you're dominant, you don't have to tolerate people coming up to you and calling you that just without provocation. A DS relationship and titles that go with DS relationships are things that are earned and negotiated. You just don't start using them without like even talking to a person. So that is another big red flag. Number 3, they don't talk about aftercare. Now, there are sort of 2 ways that this happens. One is during negotiation, they don't bring up aftercare, they don't ask about aftercare, they don't talk about their needs, and that can be a bad thing or not. Some people just have very low needs for aftercare post-scene, and so they don't mention it. And some people aren't bothered by it because they don't have any real aftercare needs. And, that could be fine. But you could also have the second situation where number 2 happens and they just say that you don't need aftercare, or they get up and like walk away after a scene. This could mean as a dominant, you could have a scene, it could be really like emotionally intense for you, and then they could just go, but you're the dom, why do you need aftercare? And just look at you like you're an alien from space. And that's not good. Go watch my video down below. You can find it in the description box. I talk all about how doms, tops, everyone, if they need it, is allowed to have aftercare, and it can be very beneficial no matter if you are the top or the bottom or whatever. So go watch that. Also, you can have a situation where a dom goes to a submissive, but that wasn't even like that intense. Like, why do you need aftercare? Like, you know your own body the best. You don't get to let people dictate when you need aftercare or not. Like, you know yourself the best. So if at all possible, you should bring up aftercare during the negotiation period and gauge what their reaction is to that question. Sometimes they're just like, oh yeah, I forgot to ask, and then it's totally fine. And sometimes they're like, I don't need aftercare. It's kind of just like too cuddly, and like I think it just ruins the scene. And you should probably think about not playing it with that person. Okay, number 4 is they talk about their partners in a disrespectful manner. The BDSM community is small for the most part. If you're online, this is a little bit different, but strictly speaking, in the real life community, there's going to be maybe 100 to 200 people in your local community at most who regularly go to events. So if you're talking shit about people that you've played with, and there's a difference between being like, I didn't really like the scene that I had with them, here's like why it was wrong, to kind of make sure you're not going to have like the same kind of experience again. And then there's being like, she was a bitch, she was crazy, she didn't let me do what I wanted, or he was like too wimpy, he like wasn't manly enough. Like any sort of derisive language toward a former partner is really not good, and they could be a perfectly adequate play partner, but imagine when you become the ex, right? Or if you become the ex. I mean, I don't want to make assumptions for you here, but if somebody is going to talk about another person that way and they do so openly, they're probably going to do the same thing about you, and it's not a situation you want to put yourself in at all. Okay, number 5 is they never play in public, or they insist that you only ever meet them in a private place. I understand that not everyone is going to be part of or want to be part of the public scene. They're not really into, going to public dungeons, whatever. That is fine. You totally don't have to go to a public dungeon to go and play. A lot of people don't even have those available, so obviously that is okay, but sort of, again, gauge how they react to it. Like, if you propose going to a dungeon, are they like, no, why would I ever want to go there? Or like, I'm not really allowed back there. If they do something that is like very much like super, super negative about that dungeon, yeah, maybe it's a crappy dungeon and you don't really have a way of knowing that if you've never been before. But 9 times out of 10, it's not going to be because the dungeon is crappy, unless they have, like, good reasons, like the dungeon monitors aren't secure enough, or they let anybody off the street in, or, such and such a rule got broken there, or whatever. Like, those kinds of things make sense, but it's really just like, oh, I don't, like, get along with the people there. There's probably a reason for that, and it's probably them. Also, you need to be aware, a lot of times people will try to insist on meeting in a private place, and while that can work out okay, you should definitely meet with somebody in public first if at all possible, and if they're even resistant to that idea, you need to walk away, because there is no good reason why you can't meet in a coffee shop to negotiate, or go to the library, or get dinner together, or whatever. Like, they are trying to hide something if that's the case, and they can spin whatever sob story they want about, like, oh, they're like a recluse, or they have social anxiety, or whatever, and that could very well be true, and I like feel bad for those people, but don't risk that, okay, guys? Just don't risk it, because there's a very strong chance that's going to end up in a bad situation. Yeah, you're probably not going to get axe murdered, but at the same time, you could definitely end up like just playing with somebody who doesn't know anything about BDSM or plays very unsafely, and so they're not comfortable bringing that out in public. Just, you know, food for thought. Okay. Number 6, they don't ask about your needs or your wants. Like everything else on this list, this applies to both submissive and dominants. So you can have a dominant who just doesn't ask you what you want to see and is like, okay, slave, we're going to do X, Y, and Z thing no matter if you like it or not. And that can totally be the language you use in the scene, but it should not be the language you use during negotiation. BDSM scenes are about 2 people or more coming together to make a scene happen that meets both of their needs, as well as also respecting their limits and boundaries. A bad dom will not ask you about your different limits and your boundaries and your needs and wants for a scene, or they will be completely dismissive. Like, yeah, whatever, that sounds nice, but we're gonna do XYZ thing. Like, no. While the dominant is the one who usually crafts a scene and makes it their own, there should still be room for input from you, the submissive, about what actually gets done and how that meets with your expectations of the scene. At the same time, you can also run into submissives who just treat dominants like, I don't even know how to make this analogy, but like a candy dispenser. Like, it's like they put a quarter into the dominant and they turn the handle and then a gumball pops out and the gumball is the scene. Like, that's not how that works. You can have a submissive who goes up to you and says, like, oh, please, master, won't you please step on my balls? And won't you please pull my hair and spit on me and do XYZ thing? Like, that's your fantasy? Cool. But dominants have limits and boundaries too, and those should always be respected. If you are new, do not worry about passing up on playing with somebody if they seem unsafe or seem like you won't actually have a good scene with them. There will be other people. I 100% promise at least one other person on this planet is going to want to play with you. Okay, number 7, they don't talk about their experience. Again, this is one that applies to everyone in the scene, but they should be at least open to questions like, how long have you been in the scene? How long have you been a dominant? How long have you been a submissive? How long have you done this kind of play? What's your experience doing this kind of play? How did your last scene with this kind of play go? Can I get references from the last submissive or dom that you played with? Like, they should be open to those kinds of questions, generally speaking. And if they are new and don't have a lot of previous experience to draw on, they should be honest about that. Yeah, somebody who's 22 probably doesn't have 10 or 5 years of experience in the scene. Because just think about the math with that, guys. Just think about the math for a second, okay? Like, you need to be honest with the people you're playing with, and you should expect honesty from the people who are playing with you. And if they do get defensive and they don't want to provide references or don't want to talk about their past experiences for whatever reason, chances are, once again, they're hiding something, and that's probably not going to turn out very well for you. Number 8, they don't talk about testing or safer sex. Now, obviously, in BDSM, not everything is going to be sexual. Most scenes aren't sexual. You shouldn't generally, with a flogging or with a spanking or whatever, have to worry about those kinds of things. But if you're negotiating for the kind of play that involves sex, you should definitely talk about safer sex options and STI testing. Generally speaking, in the BDSM community, we we take STI testing very seriously. People regularly get tested, even if they only have 1 or 2 partners. This usually means every 6 months to a year. You should be able to ask and say, hey, when was the last time you got STI tested? What were your results? They should be able to either provide directly a copy to you, depending on where they got their testing done, or be able to describe to you in detail what their results were. If they do not believe in safer sex methods or in STI testing because, quote, well, I've never had anything, so why would I need to get tested? That's dumb. Don't do it, because you can be a carrier for several different STIs even if you show no symptoms, even if none of your partners have shown symptoms. You could have had an ex from 3 years ago who showed no symptoms, who just was silently passing on gonorrhea that entire time. Like, it happens, and you need to be prepared for that. Do not play with people who don't get STI testing or refuse to talk about their status or whatever. Okay, number 9. They play when they're angry, upset, or intoxicated. The rules and like the norms around this are a little bit different in Europe than they are in America. Generally in Europe, people think it's okay to do a little bit of light play if you have had a drink or two or if you've had a beer or something like that. But you should never play with somebody who is intoxicated, who regularly shows up to play parties intoxicated, or who plays while angry or irritated or anything like that. BDSM it can be a cathartic experience, but it's not a way for a dominant to beat the hell out of a submissive because they're angry about something, because you're not going to be in control, you're not going to be communicating, and unless the submissive has specifically signed up for a scene that is supposed to be a cathartic release, they're probably not expecting that kind of energy. You should not play with somebody who is under the influence of any drugs of any kind, because that impairs consent. That impairs the ability to revoke consent at any time during the scene. It could impair their ability to, swing a flogger or use a pedal or anything like that. It could impair their ability to get somebody out safely in an emergency situation. It just there's no good reason to ever play with somebody who is regularly angry or regularly intoxicated. Just don't do it, especially not during a scene. Yeah, people can have anger management issues and they can be fine during the course of a scene, but that can get messy, and I really, really don't advise doing that. Okay, last one, number 10. They try to coerce you into doing play that you're not comfortable with. So let's say you're negotiating with somebody and you say, I have a soft limit around ball gags and I have a soft limit around bondage that restricts the movement of my arms. Perfectly reasonable, perfectly fine. I myself have limits around wearing ball gags just because of how my mouth works. I know plenty of people who even have TMJ who can't use ball gags just at all, period. It's a very good medical reason to not use ball gags. And if you have somebody who just, keeps going over and over again, it would be so hot if you could just wear ball gags in a scene. Or it's really, really important to me that during scenes my partner is gagged. And that could be perfectly fine. They could 100% really enjoy it when you wear ball gags. And they could 100% have a complete fetish for people who are gagged. That is okay. I am not trying to kink shame anybody who has those specific things, but you do not have to be the person who gives that to them. There is no reason why anybody should be coercing you to do something that is clearly outside of your limits, especially if you've never played with that before. There is an idea that a dominant can help develop a submissive in terms of, gently through very deliberate slow processes, bring things that are soft limits to things that they're open to playing with and hard limits to soft limits. That is a process that happens, but not with new play partners, and it should never be because you're being coerced into doing it. At the same time, this can also happen to a dominant. So, for example, you could have somebody who really, really, really wants you to put them in a chastity device 24/7, and you could hate everything about that idea. You could hate the idea of having to monitor somebody in chastity. You don't want the responsibility. You don't want the idea of it. It's just not appealing to you for whatever reason. And they keep bringing up but I really, really want to be in chastity, and I really, really want to serve you by being in chastity, and it would just make me feel so fulfilled if I could be in chastity. Don't do that. If you have clearly stated, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do this to you, and they keep bringing it up again, that is not good. They should probably not be somebody who is in your regular partner rotation. But yeah, that is probably my top 10 red warning signs to look out for in BDSM. Obviously, there is more than this out there. Some of these things can be difficult to spot, so do always use your best judgment. This is in no way a comprehensive list of all of the things you should be aware. The best thing you could do is use your mind. Use your mind. Just think about things in a logical way. I know it is really easy to get swept up in the magic of BDSM, but resist that urge. Try to do your best to think about things rationally when you are in BDSM and you're negotiating with somebody. So just, have fun and stay safe. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put that down in the comment section below. Links to everything I talked about in this video, links to where I got this wig and this collar and all that stuff is going to be down in the description box as well. Also, I'm going to be trying out something brand new, guys, and you guys will see it momentarily, but I have it on screen now. Yay!